Hi! Do you want to create 3D styles or custom 3D models for World of Tanks tanks? Well, if you do, you've come to the right place, because I'm going to teach you everything you need to know and more on what to do. The first thing you have to do is watch this video. You don't have to. It's the how to create custom 2D skins World Tanks. You don't have to, but I recommend it because we're going to be dealing with textures, so it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the different file types. But assuming you've watched that or you already know how that stuff works, let's get right into it. First, you'll need to download these three programs. These three are mandatory: the Tank Exporter, FBX Converter, and wotmod Editor. Links to these can be found in the description of the video. For the Tank Exporter and XML Editor, they're made by the same guy, so you would just go into the GitHub page, code, and then download. Right? So go code and then download, and then you install them like a normal program. So, let's say you've done that. You open up Tank Exporter. There you go. It's going to load, creating nodes by tier, blah, blah, blah. It's scanning your game right now to find every single tank in the game so it can put them on a list here and you can export them. Now, when you first download this program or a new update comes out, you're going to have a pop-up. I'll show you that pop-up right here. It's going to do this. Path to game folder, right? What you want to do is go to this PC. It's probably in your C drive, but feel free to check any of them. Go into that, go into your games folder. There it is. There's your World Tanks game folder. If you're on EU, it'll say EU, but yeah, there you go. Click OK. Then it's going to ask you path to your res mods. Now, here's the game folder. Here's your res mods. You don't want to click this and click OK. You actually want to open it and then click the current game version. So this is the newest version we're on. Then click OK. And now you're all set. You're good to go. You may have noticed my Tank Exporter looks a bit different from yours. I went into the settings and disabled and enabled some stuff so that it would load faster. But yeah, there you go. Today we're going to be modeling the T54. So what you do, you go here, here are the tiers. There you go. Right. And then find it. Right click. Load this. Continue. Now, that little pop-up, if a tank has a skin, it'll show it on a drop-down menu. I'll show you this in a bit when we export some other tanks. But that's where you can select skins. 3D skins, that is. There you go. Here's our nice, beautiful tank. So, first, let's extract to resmods folder. Here it is. This little pop-up comes up. We want all available LODs, so that's level of detail. We want all of them. We want the textures. We're going to be editing them. If not, we could delete them after. Tank icon, it's not necessary, but you can enable it if you want. And item something like def XML, I don't know. You don't need this. You don't have to have this. There you go. Extract. What it just did is it made these folders in here. Resmods, there you go. Vehicles. It made American and Russian. And then here we are. Here's the T54 2022. Just made that for us. So you don't actually have to open up the game files and drag and drop them and go through. It'll do it all for you, which is very nice. First of all, track. I'm not going to be touching the tracks, so I'm just going to delete them. Same thing here. Here's the track texture. I'm going to be deleting these. Now this folder, it made a Russian folder. This is sort of just a placeholder, kind of. It's not actually any Russian tank. It's this details map. What this is, I'll explain later. We're not going to be changing this because we don't really need to, so we'll delete that. And that's a common theme with this. When you delete something in here that's already from the game, you're not deleting it from the game, you're deleting it from the mods folder. So I just deleted that file. That means World Tanks will go, oh, it's not in the res mods? All right, we'll just use the default one in the res game, the actual game folders. Same thing with this, like the GUI. This is where that tank icon is. So you can edit this tank icon. I'm not going to. So I'm going to delete this folder. Just because I delete this folder, that doesn't mean it's gone. It just means I won't be editing it. It'll use the default one from the game. All right, now that we got that out of the way, here you go. Vehicles, American. There you go. Here's this stuff right here. The normal is where all the 3D modeling stuff is. We'll get to that in a sec. But There we are. Now, Tank Exporter will also export an FBX, which is something we can open in Blender. So let's do that. I'm going to put it inside just a random folder. It doesn't really matter where you put it. Here you go, T54 Heavy FBX. Save. This comes up. You don't have to adjust these. I haven't really tampered with them, although I guess I could and learn more, but for what you're doing, you don't need to touch any of this. Just click Start Export. And there you go. Got all this stuff coming in here. There. So, this is the 3D model. The actual 3D model of the tank that we're going to put into Blender. But before that, another thing you could do, you don't have to do this. You can do it if you want. Right click, Load Crashed. There you go. So when the tank is destroyed, it obviously has a different model than when it's not destroyed. You know, tracks broken, hatches open. As you can see here, it's destroyed. The texture is off, but don't worry about that. We'll fix that later. So we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to extract the res mods. So we're creating the mod here. All available LODs. There is no texture data. I don't want the tank icon, so we'll just do that. There we go. Now we go back into here. Suddenly there's the crash folder now. Check that out. Now we have a crash folder. It also made the track folder again, but again, like I said, we're not going to use it. Here's the crash inside that World Tanks uses for a lot of tanks, actually. Again, we're not going to be changing this, so we'll just delete it. Same thing with the tracks. And right here, tank detail, details map. Again, we're not going to be changing it, so we'll just delete that. There you go. Now you got the crash model and the normal model. Let's do what we did before. Export FBX. T54 Heavy crashed. Yes. Now, before we do anything else, I'd just like to point out, Tank Exporter has this little button here, question mark. If you click it, it takes you to this website. It's not really a website. You have to download the program to use it or to open it, but it basically tells you everything you need to know. So there you go. Now, this video will also tell you most of the things you need to know, plus some other things that they don't mention here. So it is actually worth watching this video, believe it or not. Anyway, we've exported everything we need here. We can minimize this. So what do we have now? We have the actual mod, and then we have this FBX files. This is what we will put into Blender. However, first, we need to open up the converter right here. We need to add these, both of these, or just one, whichever one. If you don't want the crashed, you don't need it. We want to convert these to 2013, or else Blender won't be able to open them. Convert. Done. Now you'll notice a folder was made. 2013. There you go. Got everything we need in here. So, now we can get to Blender. Let's open up Blender. So this tutorial will be useful not just for 3D modeling, but for 2D texturing, because of Blender's ability to show UV maps. So let's go into this tutorial, 2013, T54 Heavy, load it in. As you may have noticed, something appeared here, but I don't see it. For some reason, World Tanks models are really small. Like, really small. I don't know why. It's just how it is. So, before we even get to 3D modeling, if you just want a 2D texture, and you've done everything you've done so far, you could literally just pick what you want to texture, say, okay, turret. There. I want to texture the turret. Go to UV Editing. Check it out. Everything that's being textured, all the mapping, all the whatever, is being projected right here for you to see. This is very nice and handy. You might have noticed, it should be like this, but it's down here actually. Doesn't matter. This texture is being tiled infinitely. So whether it's here or here, it's the same effect. In fact, I can show you that right here. If you click this button, it'll actually show you the texture. Now the texture is very shiny. That's just an effect of Blender. We can change it later, but basically, watch this. So, whether it's down here or up here, it's the same thing. Works on this side too. But basically, let's say you're 3D mod or you're 2D texturing, right? And you're like, I want to change the gun, but I don't know where that gun is on the texture. Select it. There you go, selected. And check it out. It's showing you right here. All parts of the gun are here. Here it is. Here's the barrel. Here's some more stuff. Here's the inside. And the best part is that you can go to UV, export UV layout. There you go. And it'll export the mask. So you can open up Paint or whatever, Photoshop, and you'll have a mask of what you want to texture. It's very, very handy. So, we'll just go back to this. That's a little bit of a side note on very useful techniques for 2D texturing. Let's go back to the model. Here we are. Here's the tank. Now you can go in here and you can start, messing with things, making things look crazy or whatever. But let's say you don't want to do that. Let's say you want to add a model from something else, right? So there's a lot of 3D styles. They got cool stuff on them. Let's say you want to add it to this tank. All right, let's open up the tank exporter. First, I'm going to go with the 2684 because it's got a cool skin. So when you load it, as you can see here, gun 1, gun 01, skin. There you are. Let's choose the skin. There it is. We have it here. Now, we don't need to export to the res mods because we're not making a mod for the 2684. We just want the 3D model. So let's just export FBX. Let's do that. Another tank that I wanted was, let's see here, the M5Y. This tank has a good skin. Let's load this. Now, the M5Y actually has 2 guns, and you can see them pop up here. Gun 01, gun 02. Now, you would be inclined to think gun 01 is the stock gun, gun 02 is the upgraded gun, or the second alternative gun. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. Usually with the mid-tier tech tree tanks, you'll get a tank that has 3 upgradable guns, but you open this up, there's gun 01, that's the upgraded gun, gun 06, that's the stock gun, and then, I don't know, gun 03, that's the middle grade gun. It's not in order, and the numbers are all over the place. So it's literally guess and check. You have to guess. But anyway, I'm going to go for the skin on the M5Y, because the M5Y has a very nice camo barrel. All right, it's got like a little camo net on the barrel, and I want to add that to this tank because it's transparent. So I'm going to teach you how to do transparent stuff too. There it is. As you can see, there's the camo and it's transparent. So let's export FBX again. We just want the model. We're not modding this. So we're going to remove all. Remember, we have to convert these to 2013. So we'll take everything we just exported. We'll open these 2013, convert. Now we can export or import them to Blender. The first model. Let's just go with the 2684. Okay, there we go. I want this little ram piece part. I'm going to put that on the front of my tank. Okay, let's do that. Could delete the rest. Now, before you do anything, it's important to remember and to do this one step. I don't know why, but you have to. Right click, mirror, X global. Boom. If you don't, when you export and you open up world tanks, the textures will be inverted. They will be on the inside. So I can show an example of this. You know what? Actually, I will show an example of this, but on a different model. So I'm not going to delete this. I'm going to actually keep this. But yeah, right click, flip to the x-axis. I'm not going to flip it on this tank or on this model. So I could show you what happens if you don't do it. There you go. I've selected everything except for the RAM part. So let's just isolate that. And, well, I guess we'll just throw it on, you know. We don't have to be too crazy with it. This is just the tutorial after all. There you go. We got the RAM thing. You know what? I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Why not? There, we got this little RAM piece. Okay, so let's use this this rocket right here. Okay. All right, there we are. Now remember, I did not flip this texture. or I flip the model on the x-axis. So it's going to break, and that's the point. I'm going to show you what happens. So keep that in mind. There you go. Does that look good? Sure, why not? So we're going to tell Tank Exporter where we want these. So to do that, literally you go into here, the name, and you type wherever you want. So if you want it on the turret, you type turret. But for the RAM, I want it in the hull. So hull, and underscore, and then name it whatever you want. So I'm going to name it RAM thingy. So the second part doesn't matter. The first part, the prefix, hull. Tank Exporter will look at this name and say, oh, he wants this model on the hull, and it'll join them up. So this, I want this on the turret, so I'm going to name it turret rocket. Sure. Be careful. If you want to put like a coaxial gun, like a machine gun, don't type turret underscore gun. Tank Exporter is going to get confused because it also works on suffixes, not just prefixes. So name it something like MG or whatever. But yeah. So one last thing, oh, two last things actually. Let's go and import the barrel for the M5Y, the little camel thing. Now, sometimes the gun is mirrored on the y-axis like that. If you want to edit something where the gun is mirrored like that, don't do this on the model itself. The game will automatically flip it on its own. The only time you need to export or you need to flip on the x-axis is if you're transferring something over to a different model like this. Normally, I would just leave this as is. But since we're bringing it to this tank, I'm going to flip it to the x-axis, right? Let's delete the rest of this. So how do I want this? Maybe a little bit bigger. There you go. Looks good, I think. And like what we did before, we're going to name this gun underscore camo net. You can name it camo, you can name it net, whatever you want. Now, I won't recommend changing the tracks or the chassis because these have a lot of intricate moving parts that Blender does not show you here. So if you start messing about with this and then you export it to World of Tanks, the tracks are going to be all over the place. Like it's literally going to glitch out and wreck your screen, maybe even crash your game. If you really, really, really want to edit the chassis for whatever reason, you're going to have to go into this Tank Exporter help, and he actually tells you how to do it, editing the chassis. Now, you can't do it in Blender, or if you can, I don't know how, but I think you need a different program to do it. Anyway, I won't be editing them, so we'll just leave it as is. So there you go, we've named everything we need to. But what if you want to make a brand new model, right? Like for example, here, look. Let's go on the turret, a sphere. Why not? We'll just make it a floating sphere for demonstration purposes. There you go, here's our floating sphere. In fact, we can shade this smooth, why not? Here's our floating sphere. As you notice, the tank is gray here, like a silvery gray. And in fact, when we click this button, it is textured. Now this texture, or this, it's quite shiny. This is just a visual thing in Blender. In fact, if you go into shading, you can quite easily fix it. Like if it really bothers you that much, you can come into here, right? Just click on this thing right here in the middle. It's called Principled BSDF, and literally just the roughness, just bring it back up. For some reason it's down here, bring it up, and then it looks more normal. This will not affect the game. This is just for visual, just visual in Blender. That's it. But yeah, so these are all textured. This bad boy right here is not textured. So what should I do? You should select it. Select anything. It really doesn't matter. Just select anything that is already textured in World of Tanks, like the turret, for example. Control L, link materials. Boom. These two materials are linked now. The turret texture will be applied to the sphere. Go into material in here. Click on this and then click this. Add or new material, add a new material. Boom. It created a clone. Now, if we change the texture of this, this won't necessarily get changed. It will, but for a different reason. now that we've got that out of the way, we can name this turret, I don't know, orb. There you go. So, while you're editing, it may be useful to have some transparency. Like, for example, just for the sake, I'm just going to fix this shading because it's kind of annoying to look at this. So, again, it's just a visual thing. It's not gonna kill you or change the game. There you go. This is not transparent. In the game, we'll make it transparent, but in Blender, if you want it to be transparent in Blender, this is what you have to do. You will have to create your own alpha map. You can do this by just getting the texture already in the game and putting some effects so it goes into black and white. But basically, this is what I'm talking about. In this folder, I have one of these here. This one, net alpha. White means opaque. Black means transparent. How do we do that in Blender? Go into shading, click on the barrel of the whatever the camo is, whatever you want transparent. And I'm just going to move these here so it's easier to see what's going on. Right here, this one, the one that's connected to the alpha channel. What we're going to do, I'm going to add my own alpha channel. So I believe it was net alpha, right? I think so. Yeah, it is. There it is. We're going to disconnect it and then go from color to alpha. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do this. This is just visual for Blender. Then you can go into, I believe it's here. Yes. Alpha blend. We can go alpha hashed. That also works. Play with some of these settings. There you go. Now this is transparent on the barrel. This is useful for when you're UV mapping. So remember how I said this is tiled, right? You can see that right here. To make it simpler, I'm just going to show you like this. Ready? Watch this. There you go. You get the idea. So you can right click this, unwrap, make your own texture, do whatever. I'm not going to change that, so we'll just leave it like that. So there you are. Again, anything inside the shading tab, all this stuff I did here, completely optional. It's just for your visual aid in Blender. There's one very last thing we have to do before we export. This thing that we created needs to be triangles. What does that mean? Well, just select it. Select the whole thing. Control T. Do you see that? There's now triangles. That's the only way it'll work with World of Tanks. I'm just going to fix this real quick. All right, so this, I'm going to just mark seam. This is very good for texturing and modeling. This is a bit more advanced. So if you're going to 3D model, you probably already know this, but there we go. Now we can go File, Export, FBX. Okay, there we are. Export. Going into here. Remember, before we converted from 2009 to 2013, now I need to reverse that. We're going to take what we just exported, 2013, go back to 2009. Convert. Good. Now we can go into Tank Exporter, File, Import FBX. We'll go to where it is, 2009. Here it is. It's going to be inside the 2009 folder. Open. While we wait for this to load, I'm actually going to just open up this folder, and I'm going to create a folder called Equipment. You don't have to do this. I usually do it. I recommend it. It makes things cleaner. But we'll just go ahead and open up World of Tanks right now. So there we go. This is ready, all good to go. There's no textures. Don't worry about that. Remember, we imported an FBX. FBX doesn't have any textures. It's just the 3D model. The reason I'm doing this now is because remember what I said in my video for 2D texturing? Replacing or editing a file is fine. But if you make a new folder, you have to restart your game. So here we are. Here's the T54. Here it is. Now we're going to go into Tank Exporter. We loaded it and everything. Write primitive. Select what you want to write. We written on the hull turret, and gun. So we're going to do that. Then we're going to copy to all LODs. You want to do this, okay? Then write files. Now watch this. You click off the tank, and click back. Look at that. It's all there. Now, you may have noticed the texture is a bit off. It's a bit darker, and that's because it's using the textures that Tank Exporter generated right here. These two. Now, if you know anything about texturing in World Tanks, there's actually 4 files. ANM, AO, GMM, and AM. Tank Exporter only exports 2. The AM and ANM. The rest are just black. Why? I don't know. But it does. We're going to open this up. The XML editor. We're going to open up file for the texture we want to edit. So the hull. Here it is. A lot of stuff. Oh my god, coding. I'm so scared. Don't worry, there's only one thing you have to do. Okay. Right here. Vehicle, American. Right, that. T54, 2022. And then it's saying object 2684 hull, blah, blah, blah. What I like to do is go equipment. And then copy and paste this for all of them. Now, of course, you want to leave the ending part here. GMM, ANM, AM, AO, right? For color ID map, it's literally, don't even overthink it. Go up to the top to the actual texture of the tank and then copy its color ID map. Most of the time, for everything, it's going to be Russian common ID. This is literally a black picture. For guns, it's slightly different, but same process. Just copy everything up here, right there, color ID map, and paste it in here, and you're good. So, now we can save it. What's going to happen is that it's going to show missing texture. Of course it is. We just told it that it's inside the equipment folder. That's what we did here. We said this texture is inside the equipment folder, but we didn't put anything in here yet. So that's where this comes in handy. So what you would normally do is go to World Tanks, Res, Packages. Actually, let me just minimize this. Packages. And for example, the object 2684 is in here. So you're going to go into here, blah, blah, blah. Russian, sort through. The problem is, as you noticed, World Tanks splits everything up. Part 1, Part 2, HD Part 1, HD Part 2. For Tier 8, there's 6 different files. So all the textures are going to be distributed among them. What I did is I took everything and I exported everything into one folder. And that folder, actually, let me just close this. That folder is this. There it is, 2684 in the skin. There it is. Here's the texture that it was asking for. So which one was it? Okay, object 2684 hull 1. Let's just, you know what? In fact, this is the easiest way to do it. Just copy that. Go into here. Paste. There. These are all the textures that we need. So let's put them in. Drag and drop. There you go. Now we put those textures in that folder. Go like this. Go like that. There you go. It's now textured. Now, you don't have to actually do it like this. If you do it like this, your mod now has the textures here available for you to edit. So for example, if I go into here, so now I could draw on it. And there it is. My little scribbles show up here. Now, let's say you don't want to edit this. You're fine with how it looks. If you want to save space in your mod, you can actually delete these and make the path to the actual texture itself. So for example, the object 2684 texture, right? It's located in the Russian tech tree for the 2684 in the skin. So we can do that right now, actually. I'm going to delete these. Refresh. There you go. Missing texture. Let's assign it back through the actual game itself. So here it is. This is the path to the actual texture in the game. There you go. Now, instead, it's going to go to the Russian tech tree, the 2684, into the skin folder, the specific skin, and then pick this. So I'm going to do that for all of them. So let's save this. There you go. It's textured. As you notice, the equipment folder is empty. So our mod file size will be smaller, and it's using this texture. However, now we can't edit it. So let's just say you want to do a minor color adjustment. Okay. Let's go into here. Let's just take the AM files only. Ready? There you go. Go to here. Here's the AM file. Put it back to what it was before. So I like to copy it from here. Makes it easier. There we go. Let's do this. So it looks the same. But what we've effectively done is that we've told the game, all right, for the metallic gloss map and the normal map, the GMM files, the ANM files, and the AO files, just use the default texture in the game. However, for the AM file, don't do that. Instead, go into the equipment folder and use my texture. In fact, you could name this whatever you want, so long as it's consistent to what's in here. So now we can do this again. There you go. We got our scribbles, but we've eliminated all the extra files we don't need. Perfect. So, for example, the hues don't really line up perfectly. So I think what I'll do is just desaturate slightly. Now, it still doesn't look that good, and I'll get to that in a sec. But first, now that we're done, did I even change this? Whatever. Now that we're done with the hull, let's go on to the turret. Turret. Turret rocket. Okay, cool. First, I'm going to copy the color ID map. I'm going to put them in here. For all of them. As you can see, we got a turret rocket and a turret orb. Again, the name of this doesn't matter. You can actually name this whatever you want. Nothing will change. What does matter is this number here. So for the rocket, again, it's the same thing with the 2684. I'm not going to change its texture. So I'm just going to use what's already in the game. So the 2684 rocket texture is this. Now, again, this sometimes Tank Exporter does this, sometimes it doesn't. It actually added turret underscore to the name of this. So I would remove that, because if you don't, then you're going to have to rename the actual file. Like, you have to go in here, go like this, go turret underscore, and why would you want to do that? So we'll just copy this again. There you go. Now you might be wondering, Chems, it still looks dark and wrong. Remember, we did not flip this on the x-axis. I'm going to show you. See how it's dark? If I go inside, it's bright. The texture, or at least the lighting for the texture, is swapped. In fact, if I go into here, double-sided, false. Can you tell what just happened? It's no longer double-sided. We are seeing inside the model. It's kind of wonky. So, Let's fix it. Let's say you forgot. Oops. I forgot that I did that. What do I do now? Flip on the x-axis. It's fixed. But you're like, shit. I want this over here. Now it doesn't fit properly. I can't flip it or else it'll wreck it. Easy. Add modifier. Mirror. Boom. Yeah? Apply. Get rid of the old one. And you're good. Everything's fixed now. We flipped it on the x-axis, and then we mirrored it back so it's in its original position. Let's export. I'm going to name this number 2. We're going to go back into here. Pick number 2. 2009. Convert. Import. By the way, I should mention, there are multiple reasons why the texture could be dark. It could be missing a GMM file or an AO file, or it could also be because of the flipped model. But anyway, here we go. We'll write this. There's the turret. There we go. Now, of course, every time you write to it, the XML gets reverted back to the original. So we have to go back and then save again. Boom. Now it's textured properly. Right? You go inside it, it's invisible, yada yada. Now, actually, that's one thing I should mention. I'm going to talk about all the properties each one of these do, what they do, but I'll save that for later. I don't want to overcomplicate it right now. But basically, this is double-sided enabled. You can see inside it. This one had double-sided disabled. That's why you can't see inside it. It really doesn't make a difference, as you can tell. It's just that the one that is double-sided obviously uses more processing power. It's got to render it on both sides. So for any model that you got from World of Tanks, disable double-sided. However, if you make a model like the sphere, you might want to enable it. Unless you're better at Blender than I am. Because if I don't, I'll end up with parts of it that are inside out, parts that aren't. So, it's a whole thing. Turret orb. We want to make our own texture for this. Right now, it's using the turret texture. But we can make our own texture. So let's do it right now. You can copy it or you could just create a new one. You can make this whatever file size you want. Power of 2. So 256, 512, 1024, 2048. That sort of thing. I'm just going to go 512 for this demonstration. I'm going to make it gray. And I'm going to name it, first of all, has to be DDS. Orb. Doesn't matter what you name it. Remember, it has to be DirectX 1. Let's do another one. We'll just go with the standard, like, blue, like that. This is for the GMM file. Orb. GMM. DDS. Now, I kind of messed up. I should have probably named this AM, just for consistency. So I'm going to do that real quick. There you go. Orb AM. Orb GMM. Let's make another one. This will be the normal map. There you go. Orb A&M. And of course, it has to be DirectX 5. And then last but not least, the AO file. Now, the AO file is always one power of 2, I guess you could say, smaller than the rest. So these are all 512. This one will be 256. Okay, there we go. Now, of course, you can actually make an HD version of this, right? So you can go this underscore HD and make this even bigger. And World of Tanks will switch between the two of them. Or you don't have to. It's less work this way. So let's go in here and fix this up. So we're going to go into the equipment. And it's called Orb. There we go. Let's save it. Perfect. We got our orb. Last but not least, the gun camo. Let's open that up. Here we go. Gun camo net. Before we start with anything, notice that the color ID map is different. Color ID map is now an actual file. Again, same thing. Just copy it. Paste it in there. Perfect. Now for the rest of this, the camo on the barrel, I'm not going to change it. You can if you want. And by that I mean, I'm not going to export it into here and edit it. So I'm going to use the default in the game. So let's do that. So it's called M5Y blah 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 net. Okay, let's do that. Then the American tree, where's the M5Y? There it is. Skins, whichever skin it is, we could just do this. There we go. Here we are, we're in the file. So let's yeah, I'm not gonna drag these out. Go like this. Copy the name. So like I said before, instead of going to the T54 folder, it's gonna go into the M5Y folder. There we go, I think that's it. So as you can see, it's textured, but it's not transparent. This is where we'll get into the next part of this. I'm going to explain to you what all these properties do. Starting from the very beginning. All of these adjust little characteristics of the model. You don't need to concern yourself with this. You may have noticed, this is the identity matrix, and this is what it equals. So if you want to adjust it, adjust the row 3 part. We go down. Here's an important part we'll touch on later, but shaders. You don't have to change this. Just know that this PBS tank skinned. The skinned part is for any gun model. Why? Don't know. That's just how it is. For example, we went into the hull right here. PBS tank FX. Okay? We go into the gun. PBS tank skinned effects. Again, the only time this is important is, for example, you had a model, it was on the gun, but you're like, you know what, actually, I want to put it on the turret instead. Remember, if you're going to copy and paste it, fix this right here. I touched on this already. Double-sided, true or false. Normally, you'd set this to false for World Tanks models that you're already using. However, if it's transparent like a camo, I want the texture to show up on both sides, right? We're going to leave that set to true. We want it double-sided. Alpha test enable. This is extremely important, okay? By default, it'll be false, but not always the case. Here we go. Here's a good example. A&M file and another A&M file, okay? So let's open both of these up. You'll notice this is the normal map. One of them is green. Another one is orange and green. Why is that? By default, when this is set to false, this is what I'll be using. Just a normal green alpha channel. If you go into here and it's orange, this should be set to true. If it is mostly orange. Because what this does is as soon as you set this to true, green pixels are now transparent. So if you look on the gun of the E100, you'll notice on the barrel, it's got little holes in it, right? You notice there's holes in here. This is not actually modeled, and you can kind of tell. The hole is circular, but the inside of the hull is actually a hexagon. Can you see that? There, you can see how the texture is misaligned. So, it's transparency. World of Tanks is really, really autistic. I don't know why they did it this way. Basically, transparency is the alpha channel, right? But instead, Wargaming was like, well, why make it the alpha channel for transparency when we can make it the green channel? And that's what they did. So green channel means transparent. Now, let's take a look at the camo for the M5Y. So go back. M5Y. Skin this one. Open this up. You notice something. In fact, let me make the background blue so it's easier to tell. The part that's supposed to be transparent, right here, is green. The actual texture of the camo, right here, you see how it's squiggly? It's orange. So the fact that this has green and orange means that this is a transparency map, and we need to have the alpha test enabled. So we did that. Nothing changed. That's the next one. Alpha reference. So you saw me switch it. It was at 64 by default. But if... So I set it to 64. There you go. Now it's transparent. So what the hell is alpha reference? I'll show you. Very simple. So imagine this is the border. Okay. Alpha test or alpha reference is basically the tolerance. So watch this. You see that? So at 0, it'll say, okay, I'll make anything that's green transparent. But anything that's like slightly green or starts to turn orange, I won't. So let's just show that actually right now. There you go. It's got a lot of borders. So let's say I want to increase this to maybe around there. Now most of the green is gone. So that's what it was set to before. Let's go 16. It's a bit better. You saw 64, so let's go 128. There you go. Now it's like most of the like edges is pretty much gone. Now you can keep going. I believe 256 is the highest. So if I go 256, actually that would be 255. If you go 255, it'll be basically invisible because, well, you've basically done this. You just cranked it to the max. There you go. It's all gone now. So I don't know, 184. How about that? There you go. Now you notice the little string right here. It's starting to get a little too thin. But we'll just set it to the default. You know what? We'll compromise. We'll set it to 96, right in the middle. It was 64 by default, but let's go 96. There you go. I think that's good. So you got transparent camo. Now, for the rest of this, I'm going to go actually into the turret. Use normal pack DirectX 1. In the old World of Tanks format, this is pre 1.0, or not pre 1.0, but pre HD tanks. We go like to very old tanks here. We go into res, packages, and we pick a tank, any tank. Let's go into here. Not the tracks. Anything. The Comet, sure. Which one is it? Yes. Look at that. Old World of Tanks used an actual normal map. New World of Tanks uses the weird, you know, this one with the alpha transparency and whatever. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think, so don't quote me on this, I think if you set this to true, it'll be looking for the old version, because that's a DirectX 1 with no alpha. I don't know, you know, I'm not making models for old vehicles in the old World Tanks version, so I've never tested this. For this stuff, we actually have to go right down to the bottom. This is the important part. Use detail metallic. You're going to want to set this to true. Let's say we want to make that ball metallic looking. Okay, we want to make it metallic. You would normally pick a gray that's around sort of 55. There we go. So now it's kind of metallic looking, but it still looks kind of off. So what does this do? This right here applies this texture onto anything that's metallic. So what is this texture, you may be wondering? Well, let me show you. There you go. That's this texture right here. If you remember, that's the one Tank Exporter exported. Normally, you don't need to change this. You don't. There's a lot of things going on with the colors and the scratches. It's sort of a texture and a height map all in one. So, when we enable that, it's going to obviously turn it on, but you're not going to see anything at first. Ready? Watch this. So it's on. But nothing's really changed. That's because these are all set to 0, these two. The second half, you don't need to change. And you might actually notice it here. Right here. You can copy this if you want. Go right ahead. Go like that. And paste it in. This is basically how zoomed in that texture is going to be. So let's try this now. Oh. Well, that was for the rocket. Let's go down here, okay? True. For the orb. Right? I made it true. Nothing's changed. Let's do this. Boom. Would you look at that? There's now little scratches and imperfections that make this thing look more metallic. Now, for us, this small sphere is using the full 512 by 512, so this is going to look pretty tiled. So, let's zoom out a bit. And in fact, these are weird floats. They don't have to be. I mean, they have to be floats, but you could just write them as if they're integers. Let's just go 1, 1. Now the texture is zoomed in and stretched a little bit. I noticed this. This number should always be twice as big as this number. It doesn't have to be, but for some reason, whoops. Oh, well, if you do that, it's going to erase it all. So, this number should be twice as big. There you go. You get something that looks more normal looking. And that's what we did to this. That I unintentionally did. So if I set this to false. And zoom in. You notice the texture looks kind of crappy. This is the game's texture. This is just how it is. The reason is it's missing that. See right here? See those tiny little scratches? That is this. If I go like that. Now this tank looks stupid. You see that? It looks, you know, the scratches and all that stuff looks missing. It looks like plastic now. So, set this to true. And you want to set this to true for pretty much everything except camo, I guess. But even then, you want to set this to true for everything. Alright, so, you notice how it's pretty ugly? Now it's better. There's some texture and grittiness to it. And the same thing here, the scratches are back now. We could show that again with the little bar right here. See these chains? These chains look like plastic chains. And this whole ram thingy looks pretty ugly. Alright. Hull. True. Oh, and we want to set this. I usually go for 8 and 4. There you go. Now it looks more metallic. There's some grittiness to it. And, of course, for example, for this sphere, you can keep going as high as you want. So, let's go back to the turret. The orb. We could set this to like 16 and 8, but then the texture will become so small and tiled, it'll look kind of stupid. So, I don't know if you can tell, but the texture is just repeating at this point. So, it's so small, you won't even notice it. So don't do that. Let's go back to maybe 4 and 2. That's better. So, I think I've told you everything you need to know about modeling and then the XML file here. One thing I guess I could touch up on is, for example, up here, we've got the track where it's being attached to. The exhaust, you can change the location of that. The HP, the turret joint. I'm not sure if it's here you change it or in the turret itself. We can always try. All right, that didn't do anything. That's a pretty common occurrence, actually, not doing anything. But we can go into the turret. Why don't we change this? And then the gun joint. Why not? There you go. So the gun joint, oh, it's now up here. This will be important later, the changing the gun joint. But yeah, there you go. Okay, there is actually a few things I need to touch up on. For example, in here, the normal. I should probably just quickly tell you. I'm going to use this one, it's better. Actually, no, let's do this. Model. You don't need to change this. Primitives processed. This is the actual 3D model of the tank. That's why when we went in tank exporter, file, write primitive. That is this. This is the 3D model. Visual processed. That is the XML file that you're editing. And I didn't specify it because if you go into here and you open it up, it's the only ones you can pick. It's the visual processed. VT is not needed. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. It's like only a couple kilobytes. It's got a little bit of metadata that you're not going to change. Another thing I should probably mention is that if you're exporting an AO file, okay, here we are. Let's say I wanted to put these in here and I wanted to use them and all that. First of all, world tanks, kind of strange. If I open this up, this is not transparent, even though I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be. Okay, so it's strange. However, if you're going to edit this, you may notice there's some artifacts. I'll bring up a little clip here from a different video showing that this problem only occurs when you bring out and edit your own AO file. The fix for it is, let's say, for example, let's just pretend that this is a transparent one. Okay, there you go. Let's just go like that. Pretend this is the AO file and it's transparent. Anytime there's black here, what you want to do, make a new layer, get some green, make it very small, like 4, it doesn't even matter. Place it on top. Now, you might not notice, but I just put, you know, I'll even make it a bit brighter. There you go. I just put a layer above everything here. Let's go like that. On, off, on, off. For some reason, when you export an AO file and you're using your own, anything that's alpha, so transparent, will show up as black on the model. And it won't in the garage. Not usually. Sometimes it will. But you'll notice it a lot in-game. You zoom out and parts of your tank just look black. It doesn't really make sense. Go into your AO file, if you have one, like you export it and you're using it, and put a green background. It only needs to be like a few, like that, just a few pixels. Or a few, I don't know what this is called, a few opacity. And that's all it takes. For me, I didn't touch the AO files, so I'm not going to do any of that. But that's just one potential issue. One thing I'm going to show you is you may think it looks good right now, but if I were to zoom out, you ready? Boom. Do you notice the texture's changed? In fact, I'll make it more apparent. Or I'll make it more clear. We didn't use any of these. And the actual tank texture itself, we didn't change the tank's texture or anything. We just added new text or new models with their own textures. So we could actually delete all of this since we don't need it. Like that, like that, we're fine. Because remember, all the like textures that we added or assigned, they're either in here or in the game itself. And that's why I recommend making an equipment folder. Keeps everything nice and tidy. But now you'll notice more clearly. If I zoom out, boom, it went red. Missing texture. Why is that? Well, in the equipment, or not the equipment, in the normal, we went in and we adjusted the visual processed only in the LOD 0. we need to do it for the rest of them. So it's really simple. Just copy and paste it. Ready? I copy these. These are the ones I edited. I usually just paste it in here, hold Control, put them in. See, copy to LOD 2. Yep, copy it. There we go. And then for the last one, yeah. So now all of these have had their visual process updated. Now when I do this, and I zoom out, we're all good. So you should do this right at the end when you're done editing, because again, if you go into Tank Exporter and you go right primitive again, it'll reset all of them. So you'll have to do this again. But there you go. That's another thing you should do. So the crashed model. What I normally do with the crashed model is, for example, here it is. I delete everything that isn't the tank, or everything that is the tank but not the models. Here, I'll just show you. Right? There it is. These are all the stuff we added. Then I import the crashed model. There it is. And now you can go in here and start messing things up. So, for example, this is broken. Let's just, boom, like that. That looks kind of terrible, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Notice the name, crash turret. So this is not the normal, this is the crash. So when we export this, I'm going to name this crashed. Go back into here. Find the crash, there it is. Convert it back to 2009. Import it. There we go, here's the crashed model. Write primitive. This will automatically be enabled if you've done everything correctly. So yes, we want the hull, turret, and gun, save as crashed, copy all LODs, right. There we are. There we go, refresh. Everything's the same. But now when your tank is destroyed, your model will be updated. But the model will look bad. We need to do something to this. Let's start, I don't know, the hull. For the crashed, my bad. Actually, no, we're going here first. Copy everything for the RAM thingy, right? Whatever you did. From primitive group to primitive group. You don't have to copy it, but if you have a big model, makes things easier. Go into the crashed, okay? Go back into the hull. Same thing. However, there's a tank mat inside and a tank hull. You notice when your tank is destroyed, there's an internal model generated. Does that make sense? So there's actually two parts to the model. Now in here, you can set this and, go through all this, set it to the right location, or you can paste this in, which is what I like to do. Now you got to change the primitive group to be higher than where it was before, right? So 0, 1, 2. And you may have noticed here, shaders, tank hull, PBS tank crash. We want that. This is shader. It makes the tank look like it's crashed. So let's do that. Boom. And then one last thing. There is a crashed texture. This. Crash tile map. This is literally the texture of a broken tank that gets overlaid. Remember how the metallic map has a texture? In fact, I'll just show you. Let's go like this. There you go. This is the texture that gets overlaid on top of a tank that has been destroyed. We're going to copy that and put it in here. Now, because we copied and pasted everything, we still have use metallic enabled, this enabled, if it's transparent enabled, all that stuff. That's why I copied and pasted it. Double-sided, we can just set that to false because we're using default World Tanks models, so it won't break anything. So you got to do this for all the models. Set them to the crash shader. Let's do that. And then assign them the crashed texture. Let's do that again. And that's all it is. So, for example, for the gun camo would look kind of weird, right? This texture is for the destroyed tank model, like metal, burnt, charred metal. Doesn't really work on camo on a barrel. It'll look like a weird sort of aluminum foil type thing. So what you can do, just delete it. Alternatively, you could set this primitive right here to 2. What is 2? It doesn't exist. There is no second model, so it'll be invisible. However, sometimes this can cause the game to lag. I don't know why. Maybe it's referring to something, it's whatever. The surefire way to get it to work, just delete it. So if you have like a gun lamp, you could do what we did before, but this is the gun camo. And I don't want the camo to show up when the tank is destroyed. So you could either delete it here, make it invisible here by scaling it, or just delete it in here. There we go. Save. So, how can we check if the crashed model is working? One thing that Tank Exporter does, and I think I mentioned this already, when you load a tank, it tries to load it from the res mods first, and if the res mods is empty, then it goes right to the game directory. Well, let me prove it to you. Let's load this. We're going to load it again. You notice we just loaded the tank, but it's got all the stuff we added because it loaded it from the res mods first. In fact, if we try to export it, it'll give you a warning. Danger, Will Robinson. Okay, whatever that means. You're about to write an FBX loaded from the res mods. Doing so will corrupt the chassis marker. So it's basically saying you're exporting your own model, not the default game model, which is fine. If you have something like a Steel Hunter tank, Steel Hunter tanks don't show up here. So what you can do, you can drag the primitive processed into this folder and then import it this way. It's a little trick there. But before that, forgot to mention, of course, the visual processed. We have to clone them for all of them. So this is the crash now. We're done editing these. Let's put them in here. There we go. So if you want to check if your crash model worked and you've textured everything without having to go and play a pub, you could just go here, load crashed. So read this, check this out. There are more models than entries in the visual. I can load them, but with no texture info. This was done on purpose. Remember, the gun? We deleted a section because we wanted it to be invisible. Tank Exporter just said, hey, I'll show it, but with no textures. In World of Tanks, it doesn't even bother. It doesn't even texture it. Now, for some reason, the hull RAM is not showing up. Of course, as you can see, the barrel has been flipped on the y-axis. So, it's a good thing we checked on that now. What you would want to do is rotate it and then offset it like that to sort of mimic this. That way, because what it does, it flips it, right? But if we flip it first, it's a double flip and it gets put back to the original spot. I'm not going to because I don't care, but how you can convert this from a res mods to a mods folder is exactly the same as a 2D texture. You copy this and put it in the res. So I'll show you like this. Res mods. Here's the tank. It's called American, right? Not America. Because World of Tanks is very inconsistent. Okay, good. So everything's in here. We have everything that we wanted to change. And you could go ahead and trim it up even more. Like for the normal, you can get rid of the chassis because we never even edited it, but it's only a few kilobytes, so I don't really care. And then you zip this up. Cool mod. .wotmod. Archive format zip. Compression level store. There. There you go. You got your wotmod. So you can put this in here now. For reference, we open it up. Res, vehicles, the nation, and then the tank. if we want to load this, we have to restart our game. But anyway. Unfortunately, the way the garage models things, it's a bit different from how it is in-game. So to make sure everything's working perfectly fine, we're going to hit the battle button. Now, hopefully the gun won't be broken. The gun is broken. Alright, so the reason this occurs is because the T-54's gun has a little more intricacies than your standard gun. Let me show it to you right here. You see this little like net, this cloth thing? When the gun elevates and depresses, this folds in and out. So this part of the cloth doesn't move at all, right? This is attached to the turret. And this part does move. It goes up and down with the gun. So there's a bit of animating going on in here, and that's what's causing the issue. So, for example, I took the XML code from the T-54 and the shit barn. The reason I picked the shit barn is because the shit barn's gun is very basic. It's basically just a tube. That's it. There's no fancy animating or anything going on in there. So if we compare between these two, they're more or less the same. This part's slightly different, but that's not the main issue. If we scroll down to this part, all right, let's get these aligned. Do you notice how the T-54 has this extra bit here? That's what's causing the issue. Now, what you can do, you can go ahead and delete this. But sometimes it crashes because there's other parts of the model that depend on it. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a pain in the ass. So what I like to do is pick a tank that has a relatively simple gun, like the shit barn, right? It's just a tube. There's no like canvas here that's going to screw everything up, and just extract it. Okay, let's do that. There we go. So let's open these up. Here's our shit barn. Normal, there we go. Take the visual processed and replace it. But first, because remember, we edited this file to assign the textures to our model. So what you should do is open this and save it on a text document, like this, for example. Then, transfer the visual process over from the shit barn to whatever tank has the problematic gun. Let's go into the XML file now. So as you can see, this is all the code for the shit barn's gun. So if we were to boot up the game right now, the camo will not show because it's not being listed here. And the gun's texture will have the shit barn's texture. So let's go back to the text file that we saved before and let's copy it. Start from the primitives group. This is the T-54's texture and then the camo's texture. Let's go all the way down to /primitive group. Copy that. Let's put that in here. Boom. So effectively what we've done is we've said, we just want the basic model, no animating or anything here, right? Same as the shit barn. The only difference is that the textures are being assigned to the T-54 and the camo. So let's save that. All right, here we are. There. Gun is aiming up. Everything is fine. However, since we've told it we don't want it to be animated, there's a hole here. The whole gun just moves. It doesn't even care about this canvas fabric thing anymore. What you can do is you have two options. One, you could download 3D Max. You can get real into it, learn everything there is, and hell, even animate your own models. Although maybe it would require some Python scripts. I'm not sure, but. Or alternatively, what you can do is work around it. So for example, this right here, we can go like this. Make it bigger, sink it into the turret. I mean, the way I've done it, okay, that doesn't look very good, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Something like that. That way, when the gun rotates, there won't be a gap in here. You can do whatever you want to do. You can fill this in. You could actually maybe model the turret from behind to close this gap. Or you could model the gun to have some sort of spaced armor shield, like I have on some of my tanks. Here, I'll show you. Like, for example, what's a good tank? Yeah, this. This is the Chieftain prototype. I put a gun mantlet on top of it. There you go. Looks cool, I guess. It's the same gun mantlet on this. I couldn't decide which tank I wanted to put it on, so I just put it on both. But yeah, there you go. You could always just cover it up. But that's how you fix the gun. And you know what, honestly? You might not even care. Okay? Because this is only visible when the gun is extended all the way. In normal gameplay like this, you probably won't even notice. So, it's up to you. But yes, this is how you 3D model in World of Tanks, and it's basically everything I know up to this point. Now, there's going to be a pinned comment in the comments of any new information I've learned or acquired, whether that be how to animate, or some secret feature I didn't know about, etc. Because I'm going to be honest with you, the reason that this video was split into 2 parts, this is a different replay, and I'm recording this a few days later, is what I would do previously is I would take the shit barns, I would take this gun, put it on the shit barn, write primitive, drag the model back onto this, and then manually realign it in the XML file. It wasn't until like 10 minutes ago I realized it's just the XML file that needs to be adjusted in order for this to work. So I'm learning things all the time. So as soon as you're done this video, scroll down and see if there's a pinned comment. If there is, there's going to be some good information in there. But yeah, anyway, I hope this has been useful for you. It's a very long video, but this is kind of a complicated subject, and I've exhausted this at least more than, like, anybody else. I'm not saying I know more than everybody else, but I've definitely documented more than anybody else, because there are some things, especially in the XML file, like I'll just show you right here, like there's just some like little details here that's just not documented anywhere. At least not in English, it isn't. So, yeah. Hopefully this was helpful. And, oh, one last thing. If you want to add a light to a tank, because you know some models have like an actual light with like a glow, that's part of the, quote, animated model, end quote. By that I mean, in the model that Blender cannot see, there's a part specifically designed to glow, and you need something like this right here. It's like another, just like how the T-54 had an extra bit of this to animate the canvas, there's an extra bit of this to generate a sort of a light, and I have not figured out how to do it. I've asked Nikita, and he says you need 3D Max or a special program, or make it a separate model and use Python. And I can't decide what's worse. Learning a new 3D modeling software or trying to do Python. I fucking hate Python. Curly brackets are the way to go, like this. Fight me. I dare you. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this helped. And if it did, great. And, yeah. Fuck off.